Our chocolates are manufactured in Switzerland. So the Swiss have been making premium chocolates for 450 years. So they sort of know what they're doing. They showed me the numbers, and this was like midway through the year. And we had already sold like $300,000 worth of product on Instacart over the last few years. I mean, cacao prices went from $3,000 or $4,000 a ton to over $13,000 a ton in a
Wow.
matter of just a few months.
If you have not seen Alter Eco or tried their chocolate yet, I highly recommend going to your local Sprouts and grabbing some of their delicious chocolate. Alter Eco is a pioneer in regenerative agriculture that makes some of the cleanest, greenest organic chocolate and snacks on earth. We'll be diving into the quiet work behind their mission, their zero waste packaging, and how they literally reverse climate change, one chocolate truffle at a time. Without any further ado, let's jump straight into the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Quiet Work podcast. Today, we are going to talk about growing a business in an industry that makes a lot, maybe even 99% of us happy. I've brought some props with me here, get some chocolate to snack on, and I'm bringing the CEO of Alter Eco on the podcast today. I'm very excited about this conversation. Keith, please introduce yourself and tell us about the company you represent. We'll start with that.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for having me. My name's Keith Bearden. I'm the CEO of Alter Eco. We are predominantly a chocolate company. We do have a line of granola as well, and it's also very delicious. Our chocolates are manufactured in Switzerland, so the Swiss have been making premium chocolates for 450 years, so they sort of know what they're doing. And the company is really driven around four main principles. One, we want to make a great tasting product because the reason people buy chocolate is because it tastes great. But if you go a little bit deeper and you look at the name Alter Eco, the reason it's called that is because we help the farmers restore the native ecosystems in which cacao originally grew in. So it grows in a jungle. It grows around plantain trees and coconut trees and passion fruit vines and avocado bushes. And historically, what companies and farmers have done is they've gone in and clear cut everything to plant cacao because it was the biggest cash crop. But that kind of destroys the ecosystem and it has a big impact on climate. And then with the climate change that we've experienced over the last 10, 15, 20 years, you find that those monocrop cultures don't produce as much product. And in times of drought, the plants really suffer. And so in times of too much rain, they suffer as well. So we help the farmers restore that balance. So that's one thing. The other thing is all of our chocolates are Fair for Life certified. And so we try to make sure that the farmers and everybody in the supply chain receives a fair wage. And then lastly, we try to reduce waste. And all of our packaging's at a minimum recyclable, but in most cases actually compostable.
Interesting. So that creates a beautiful ecosystem that a lot of other companies should follow as well to make it ethical, good for us, and at the same time, very much delicious. And before we dive
Absolutely.
deeper into your current role, tell us about your background. How did you end up being the CEO or board member of Alter Eco? What did you do before? Looking at your resume, there's quite a few different industries that you touched or delved into. So tell us about your background.
Yeah, I've done a lot of things. I tell people the reason I've done so many things is because I'm old, but I started my career in IT, actually. My undergraduate degree is in computer science. And so I started and spent the first 15 years of my career with the Dow Chemical company. And I was actually fortunate enough to get a couple of international transfers with Dow. And they're a big global corporation. And the thing that I learned from Dow was how to really run a company because they were very good at organizational management, setting goals and targets and achieving those and fiscal responsibility. So I have a lot of great things to say about the company and how it was managed, but we decided that we were going to leave the big corporate world and go do something a little more entrepreneurial. And my wife and I packed up and moved the family to Portland, Oregon, where I worked for a family-run business in the dental equipment industry for a few years and then really became entrepreneurial and started my own consulting company. And that's where I really got involved in food and beverage. If you know anything about the Pacific Northwest, you know that there is a plethora of small food and beverage companies. And a lot of them have been spin outs of Starbucks or, different behemoth companies out there, but a lot of them are very entrepreneurial. And I had a bunch of personal clients with my consulting company that were in food and beverage. And the most notable one was a company called Yogi Tea, an herbal tea company. And so I had consulted with them for about 3 or 4 years. And then they offered me the role of international managing director or international CEO. And so I sold my consulting business and picked up the
Wow.
family and moved back to Europe. And we moved to Hamburg, Germany, and I ran the Yogi Tea international business for about 7 years. And
Interesting.
from there, I've stayed in food and beverage.
Yes, I mean, it's a great industry to be in because, like you said, there are so many up and coming companies and entrepreneurial brands that create a variety or diversity of good products in the market. So we can shift away a little bit from the monopoly that a lot of those spaces have seen, and I think that's great for the ecosystem for us all. And if you have lots of a big mission behind it, I guess we should say big mission behind like Alter Echo, then it's always a great pleasure to be part of that team and see it grow. So you've moved places, you've built company. I didn't know that you sold a consulting business. How does one sell a consulting business? I thought it's
Well,
attached.
no, I had actually built it up to 12 executive C-level consultants. So within about 6 or 8 weeks of actually hanging out my shingle, I had more work than I could do personally. So I hired my first employee or my first partner, if you will, and then we just kept growing. And as it continued to grow, we built a model where the company would get a small percentage of the revenue, but the consultants got the lion's share. And we built some standard practices for how we went in and worked with companies. And then and the company was me and my wife at the time. We did all the back office billing, legal contracts, and everything like that. And we would take a percentage of the revenue. And so when I decided to take the position with Yogi Tea, the first guy that I brought in, I said, "Hey, are you interested in continuing this?" And he said, "Absolutely." And so I sold it to him. And believe it or not, it still exists today.
No way. Great.
Yeah.
I love
Yep.
that. Yeah. Didn't know
Yep.
that you can sell it, but that makes a lot of sense. So was there strictly consulting or were you also hands on? Like you had like a service that you
We
delivered?
yeah, we would actually take the role of a fractional
Mhm.
position in most companies. We were more fractional CFOs or CIOs. I got more involved in sales and marketing with Yogi Tea, which is why they asked me to run their international
Mhm.
operation. So yeah, we played more of a strategic, but a very hands-on role with the teams. We usually sat in the executive teams with the companies where we were consulting.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's a good idea because now you don't have to have hundreds of clients and you can have a huge impact on the companies that you believe in and you're a part of. That's great. I know
Well,
that.
and there's so many small to mid-sized companies that maybe don't need a full-time CFO or a full-time CIO, and so we could provide that service with far more experience than they could actually go out and afford on a full-time basis. And so it's a great model, and like I said, they still exist today, and they're doing very well.
Yeah, thanks so much.
You ask how I got to Alter Eco, though, that's kind of an interesting little side story.
Go ahead.
I was at a trade show, a food and beverage trade show back in 2018 in
Okay.
Baltimore. It used to be called Expo East. They don't have that show anymore. They've kind of closed it down. But I was at a cocktail party and I was in line to get a drink, and the guy in front of me had an empty glass, and me being the wisecracker that I am, I said, "Hey, you could let me cut in front of you. You've already had one drink." And he looked at me and he said, "I can't help it if you relate to the party." And we started talking, and it turns out he was a partner at a private equity firm that owned Alter Eco.
Wow.
And so we chatted for about an hour, and he asked me if I was interested in working with them and being an advisor to their fund. to the private equity fund? And I said, yes. And so I became an official advisor to the fund shortly after that. And then in 2020, they asked me to take a board seat with Alter Eco. And then in 2023, the private equity group, as most private equity groups do, decided they were ready to turn over that asset. And so I raised my hand and said I would buy it. And I put together a group, or partnered with a group out of Houston, Texas called Trek One Capital. And we purchased Alter Eco in 2023.
Wow, congrats. That's quite a story. So for those of you who are going, sounds like this is the expo season right now. Everyone's going to some sort of expo. There's always that add-on to go to the attend a cocktail party or not. Your call to action here that yes, absolutely add that add-on and go to the cocktail party. That's where the business is
Absolutely.
on. What a story. So how did you decide to take over the role of a chief executive officer? Because I can imagine, we'll dive into that in a second. I can imagine it comes with lots of responsibilities day to day as far as operations go. So what was the story there from 2023 onwards?
It does, but I mean, I'd been a CEO of several companies up to that point, and when I joined the board of Alter Eco, one of the things I saw right away was that this was a great brand, had so much brand equity and so much brand loyalty from the consumer, but the company was really run as a branded marketing company, and it wasn't very operationally efficient. And
Mm,
so, like a lot of impact companies, they had a great mission and great impact, but they weren't profitable and weren't consistently profitable. And so I say all the time, you can only have impact as long as you can stay alive. And so when the private equity group decided they wanted to sell, I, being on the board, I had seen under the hood, so to speak, and I knew a lot of places where we could make operational improvements. And I knew I could introduce some changes that would create that consistency and profitability and an engine for growth as well. And so that's why I was so confident about it, because the brand had so much brand equity. And so we turned it around and we've been profitable and we're growing and we're opening up new markets. And so it's been a lot of fun. And I've got a great team. I mean, I couldn't do this without my team. They're phenomenal.
when that speaking of team, how big is the team at the moment?
The funny thing is we're only 6 full time, but we have a lot of partner resources. So we have a sales agency that does all of our sales, and we have broker agencies. We have a social media team that's outsourced. We have a PR team. I'm in New York City. Our PR team's in New York, so I'm meeting with them. So we have a lot of what I created an infrastructure of the best, if you will, and but not all full-time Alter Eco employees.
That's I guess that's a solution to running a lean operations. And as you said, you're profitable, so that's you're staying alive, and that's the main thing to grow a business. Rule number one is to stay in the business, right? Stay,
That's right.
that's the part of doing this. So
They
very
they
lean.
say they say the best ability is availability.
That's a good one too. Yeah, have to write it down. So very lean team, and I'm actually surprised to hear that, because given your presence on like shelves of local stores, especially here in California, wherever I go, I usually see Alter Eco somewhere. And
Mhm.
now that I know that you guys have also some other products like granola that I saw on the website actually, then I might look into that as well. Obviously, the flavor is there, everything you've mentioned is there, and it definitely stands out on all those shelves out there. So I do very much like it, and the rest of the family and guests too. So here's my direct feedback from a consumer.
Great.
So how does one grow a company like this? Doesn't look like you need a lot of more talent. You have a team set in stone. What's next? Like what are the how does your day to day look like?
Yeah, well, Alter Eco has traditionally been a very natural channel focused company. And when I say natural channel, I'm really referring to the bigger players like Whole Foods, Sprouts, natural grocers, but also the natural independent stores. We have a very loyal following in the independent natural foods retailer space. And so that's been the premise of their marketing efforts, has been to that market, to the natural channel shopper. But I have the belief that, there are shoppers in the consumer space in conventional retail that would appreciate the same products and appreciate a better for you, clean label, healthier product that's also doing good in the world. And so we are very, very much focused on growing in the conventional market space. And we just got notice a few weeks ago that we have 5 of our products going into over 1,400 Publix stores.
Florida,
So Florida, Georgia, North South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, that Southeast region. So we're very grateful for that business. The buyer there is very focused on delivering high quality premium offerings for their consumers. And we're really excited about going into that marketplace.
100%. Whenever we were in Florida, that's the store where we shop. So I can
Mhm,
restock then when I'm traveling as well. How does one develop those relationships? Obviously, you have, as I mentioned, great retail presence and those stores that usually offer some healthier alternatives and
mhm,
at least makes me feel better with my consciousness when I shop there. Let's put it that way.
mhm.
Given the information that we hear all the time about the quality of food and the source of it, I think those sorts of retail chains stand out there. And how does one develop a relationship like this when you would look back when you first were approached by Alter Echo and maybe you've heard
Mhm.
some stories how they started? How does one get into the retail space and continue to nurture that relationship? Because obviously, as you just mentioned, it compounds. You can always expand in that area as well.
Well, I mean, I think a big part of the way that you make those first introductions is through the trade show circuits.
Mm,
Expo West is coming up in 2 weeks, and it's the first week of March in Anaheim, California. It's a 4-day show. There'll be 3,500 vendors and approximately 100,000 attendees. Now, it's hard to get somebody's attention in time there, but if you're persistent and you work hard enough, some of the buyers will actually come by your booth and talk to you. And if you have a compelling story, and it's not just a great product, it's actually a story behind it.
mm,
People like to know the backstory. Then you start to build that relationship. But personally, I travel a lot. I go and visit my customers. I make a point to be available for them and try to continue to build that relationship because at the end of the day, people do business with people they like.
100%. That's absolutely right. And you've mentioned a great story at the cocktail bar as well. That how it started. That's another lesson there. And speaking of visiting your customers and clients, one gentleman comes to mind. He owns or he's part owner at a company that does midday squares. I'm
Oh,
pretty
I
sure.
know them.
Yes, you've seen them. And what I love about their storytelling, I guess you can say,
Hmm.
is that he visits a store where they have their products. He records those funny videos with not the actual manager or what
Hmm.
have you, but actual people that work at those stores, and he features
Hmm.
them and interviews them sometimes and shows how their product on shelves and how they take care of it. And then he asks some people that use it, they buy it accidentally. I mean, during this
Hmm.
during the time when he's there. I think that always creates a great content for your visibility online, and
Yeah.
that story always comes to mind with him. And I guess it's working well for them. And they've been also very open about the struggles that they had in the chocolate industry from the very beginning.
The chocolate industry's been tough. It's been very tough over the last few years. I mean, cacao prices went from, $3 or $4,000 a ton to over $13,000 a ton in a
Wow.
matter of just a few months at the beginning of 2024. They've since come back down, but the interesting thing is the commodity, the conventional price has come back down. Organic chocolate is still very expensive because there's a limited supply of organic fair trade chocolate. There's a lot more conventional chocolate that goes into Hershey's, Mars, Nestle, and there's a market for that, of course. But we deal in a very high quality, organic, fair trade chocolate, and there's not a whole lot of that out there and available. So that price has stayed quite high. But additionally, up until just recently, when they gave some reprieve to food products, we were all hit with tariffs too last year. And that had a big impact on the entire market, not just chocolate, but a lot of food products that are imported. The average
Wow.
consumer has no idea what when they go to the grocery store, how much of that came from somewhere else. I mentioned earlier our chocolates are made in Switzerland, and Switzerland was hit with a 39% tariff.
Ah, wow. That is insane. And then we complain when the chocolate price goes from $4 to $5 or from 4.50
Hmm.
to 50. Yeah,
Yep.
that's insane. But that's more than 3x in 2024 if my math is mathing.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
insane. How did it impact your forecasting, I guess, and planning for the future? I mean, it
It's significant impact. I mean, now our investment group got together right after the prices shot up, and they said, "Did we do a smart thing in buying a chocolate company?" And I said, "Well, had we known that cacao prices were going to go up this much, maybe we should have invested in cacao futures. Like all commodities that go up, they eventually come back down, and so things are starting to normalize." And I will tell you, you can read the news. I mean, most food companies suffered in 2025. Even the big guys, they reduced their earnings forecast, and they reforecasted their sales, and they reforecasted their cost of goods, because so much, like I said, so much of our food supply system is imported. So we've all had to tighten our belts quite a bit to survive. And our mantra in 2024 was, it was fabulous because we pre-bought a lot of our cacao beans at the end of 23, beginning of 24, before prices skyrocketed, or we at least had contracts in place. And fortunately, our farmers honored the contracts, because we buy from a lot of smallholder farmers in Ecuador, Dominican Republic, and Peru. And so we were able to survive most of 2024 without absorbing those higher prices. But going into 25, we knew we were going to get hit with it. And then compound that by throwing the tariffs on top of it, it really made it difficult. So our mantra for 25 was survive. But now we've kind of come out of that cycle, and our mantra for 26 is grow. So,
It's grow or thrive, grow and thrive. I love
hmm.
that. Next year it'll be thrive. Now it's
Hmm.
grow. That reminds me of a story from Charlie Munger or Warren Buffett, where I guess both of them, since they were back then involved in that story when they bought a chocolate company, and they said, surprisingly, every year when we doubled sometimes our prices, people kept buying those chocolate, our chocolate, and they never stopped buying. So they never complain about. Maybe here and there they complain, but most of the people never complain. So we kept increasing the prices. People kept buying, and that's how we survived the shifts, or the particular company. Obviously,
Hmm.
they have a lot of companies under their belt survived. So maybe that's the story there. People love chocolate, and there's so many studies that chocolate is good for you and for your mood and for your well-being and health.
Hmm.
I think good chocolate, let's say, good chocolate.
Yeah. Yeah.
I I know that there will be a market for it for sure moving forward, or continue to grow the demand. Now, what I wanted to ask you is about the e-commerce part of it.
Hmm.
Are you growing on the e-commerce side, or I mean, obviously now increasing the presence in the public store, 1,400 stores you've mentioned, so that's quite a presence. But what about e-commerce? Where does it come into play?
So our e-commerce is growing. I will tell you, chocolate doesn't really ship well any time of the year. During the summertime, if you don't put it in pretty cool packs and insulate it, it will melt. In the wintertime, if it gets left outside on your front porch before you get home from work, and then you bring it inside, and it all of a sudden goes from, let's say I'm in New York City today, I think it's 38 degrees outside. You bring it in and it's 75 degrees in your house, it will do what's called blooming. And that's
Hmm.
when it turns kind of white. And what that is because of the differentiation in temperature, the actual cacao butter, the fat crystals in the chocolate kind of separate from the rest of the chocolate.
Wow.
And if you're making your own chocolate at home, there's a step called tempering, where you heat it up and then you cool it down and then you heat it up again. And that's to create that bonding between the fat and the rest of the cacao products, the cacao nibs. And we do the same thing when we make chocolate. But if you change the temperature real quickly, sometimes it'll bloom. And so chocolate's not a great e-commerce product.
I can imagine living in a place where we have 120 degrees for 1 to 2 months of the year, and the rest of the year is pretty warm. I mean, we just had the 85 to 90 until last week, so it's
Hmm.
it's pretty warm in here. I can imagine it's coming with some challenges.
But our business is growing. I would say we're probably up 25 or 30% year over year with our e-commerce business.
That's great.
So we have three warehouse locations with our e-commerce partners. We have one in California, one in Missouri, Kansas City area, and then one in on the East Coast. And so the result of that is we can be usually at your house within no more than 2 days, but oftentimes same day. So that
I
helps
think
a lot.
if you have, I mean, I'm pretty sure you have also like bulk orders, like for a household, maybe of 4 or 5 people, they ordered
Mm.
10 chocolates instead of 1 or 2, or maybe even
Oh yeah,
more. That
our
that
average
yeah, go
Our
ahead.
average our average order value on Amazon and on our own website is around $85 per order.
There you go. Yes, that's quite a few chocolate pieces there for
Mhm,
every family. That could give you that maybe better, different containers. I saw how they're. I mean, so I sometimes purchase meat online as well, directly
mhm,
from the, and they usually ship it. But keeping your customers up to date where the product is at, that's definitely the key here,
mhm,
because it's always nice when I know that the product is going to arrive, or the package is going to arrive to this afternoon or this morning, so I can let someone know to take it inside or put it at least in the garage or somewhere, so it
yeah.
doesn't go bad. And then Instacart, I think that's a great channel. That's what I saw
We
on a website. Yeah.
Yeah, we do very well with Instacart, with DoorDash, with a couple of other, delivery services. It's surprising how much Instacart actually has taken over that marketplace. And when I was first approached by some of the guys at Instacart about doing some advertising on Instacart, I'm like, oh, nobody buys Alter Eco chocolate on Instacart. They're like, well, would you like to see the numbers? And they showed me the numbers, and this was like midway through the year, and this was in 2024, midway through the year. And we had already sold like $300,000 worth of product on Instacart. And I'm like, no way. They were like, yeah, people love chocolate. They add it to their grocery order.
That's
So,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we partner with Instacart quite a bit now.
Yeah, I saw that on the website, and that makes a lot of sense because they know how to. They already prepare the packaging so that it can stay outside for a little bit,
Yeah.
at least. Obviously, not for a day, but that's definitely a good solution there, and it's always nice addition to your grocery when you have some chocolate in it as well. And
Hmm.
again, there's a lot of studies on that for those who want to boost your mood. Get some chocolate; it's always good for you. So it sounds like back to Alter Echo business model. It sounds like you have mostly the 6 full-time employees operate remotely, or do you have
Hmm.
an office space where you spend most of the time?
No, we're all remote. We do have so our capital partner is a group out of Houston called Trek One Capital. And they
Mhm.
have offices in Houston. So they provide all of our back office services like finance, IT, legal, those types of things. But my team that's directly associated with Alter Eco, we're all remote. I live in Tennessee. We've got people in Illinois, North Carolina, Oklahoma, California, Texas. We're all over.
So how does this team dynamic work when you're remote in different states, and you're obviously the head of it, the CEO? So how does your day to day as a team look like typically?
We have daily calls, usually only 30 minutes, unless there's something special, the crisis going on. But we kind of touch base every day just to make
Uh-huh.
sure that if there's anything, questions, and we use Teams a lot to chat back and forth with quick questions. We're all always online. And even though I'm in New York, I had my operations director who's in California, she texted me or chatted me on Teams just a few minutes before our call. And she said, are you available? I got a quick question, so we're very interactive.
Got it. That has changed a lot, and made it easier for the remote teams to be able to communicate. I'm sure you've heard about the EOS method, the entrepreneurial
Mhm,
operating system, where you set
mhm.
your goal for 1 year, 12 months, 3 years, 10 years. Is that something that you've seen the companies that you've been involved with, and now with Alter Echo? Is that something that you also implement, or similar model?
Similar. We don't actually use EOS. I have in other companies, but yes, we have. We have quarterly goals,
Quarterly goals.
and then we do annual goals, and then we have a 3 to 5 year goal, and it's more of our where do we want to be in 3 to 5 years? Do we want to, we're a financial holder. Trek One Capital is the parent, so they're not a chocolate company.
Mm.
They're not a Mars or a Nestle or a Hershey's. Do we want to continue to grow Alter Eco and maybe add some other companies to it that are complementary? Or do we want to sell it at some point? That's a conversation we have at the holding company level. But then within my team, we talk about we want to open up. We just, like I said, landed Publix. We want to open up Kroger. We want to open up Target. We want to be an HEB. We want to be the number one organic chocolate brand in the United States. That's our objective.
Very clear. I can see it happening over the next couple of years. You're well on your way there, and maybe even faster than you think. That's what I wish for you and the team. Hopefully,
Thank
it's
you.
going to happen. The final part, Keith. Let's talk about your goals personally. Like,
Mhm.
what's your goal with what do you do?
Well, you know, as I said earlier, I'm old. And when I got involved in Alter Ego, I had a lot of people say, "What are you doing? You should be retired." I have way too much energy and I have way too much fun doing what I do. I love Alter Eco. I love the business of food and beverage. I love the regenerative agriculture, the ecosystem restoration side of it. Alter Eco's been doing this since the beginning. The founders started this company 25 years ago almost with the right focus on we're going to deliver a high quality product that is good for the planet and good for the people. And we've maintained that mission. So whether I step aside and, just play a board role or whatever at some point in the future, that's all fine and good. But always going to be an evangelist for this type of movement. And so I'm helping other companies. You mentioned it earlier on. We set the bar. We want other companies to follow. And so I speak at a lot of events and conferences, get a sustainable food summit in San Francisco a few weeks ago. I'm speaking at Expo West in California in a couple of weeks. And so I'm out there trying to get other companies to sign up for this mission to change the world. And they're not going to change it in my lifetime, but I have 3 grandkids and the youngest one's 2. And I hope that maybe someday I can look down and they'll say, yeah, we made a difference for them.
I love that. That's quite a statement. And I have to say, ever since we connected, there's certain enthusiasm and energy in your voice and how you appear, even though it's mostly remotely or it's only remotely for now. I hope that we will be able to shake hands at one point. That is so contagious. That energy is so contagious that I'm truly honored that we had an opportunity to speak. If Keith, if you had an opportunity to sit across the table from Keith, who's just starting out, what piece of advice would you leave with him? I have to hear it from you. Here's
Yeah. I've done so many different things throughout my career, but one of the things that I've always come back to is obviously there's core principles of honesty and integrity in everything we do, or I think there should be. But one of the things that I've kind of resonated in on, especially after getting involved with Yogi Tea and with Alter Eco and other food and beverage companies, is never be afraid to charge for the value that you deliver.
yeah, that's a
And
big
that
one.
that that's as a consultant, that's as a brand, that's as a product. If you deliver value to the consumer, and you said it yourself, you keep raising prices, the consumers keep coming back. Well, if you deliver a high quality, high value product, they will come back. So never be afraid to charge the value that you deliver.
I love that. That's a big statement. Another one to write down and reread quite often. And finally, what are you excited about the most? I mean, it's February, so still early in 2026. Is there anything that you're particularly excited about for the rest of the year?
Yeah, we've got some new products coming out. Some new flavors and structure of products, but also some new formats. I mentioned, we've traditionally been a natural channel company. We're coming out So our bars, you held them up. Those are pretty big bars. They're not something that you necessarily eat at one setting, or at least you shouldn't. Probably it's quite a bit.
You could.
You could. I do sometimes, but the convenience channel is where most chocolate is actually sold.
Mm,
And so we're coming out with smaller bars and smaller formats at a more affordable price point, obviously, if it's smaller. It's got less cacao in it, less mass. And so we're going to try to start opening up that convenience channel and go into, again, the higher end, stores like Wawa's and Sheetz and Casey's and some of those that really respect the value and proposition for premium food.
I love it, and I'm looking forward to that. I'll definitely grab one or two whenever I see it. So thank you so much for letting us know. So I'll be on the lookout for it. And thank you so much for this conversation, Keith. I know you're super busy, constantly traveling and doing so many things, but I hope that this message will reach the right person at the right time and will impact someone's life, and will continue to spread the word about creating companies that have a mission, that follow it, not just a statement on a wall somewhere, but actually truly believing in it, and making an impact every single day. So thank you so much for what you're doing. Wish you that presence, that the retail presence that you discussed earlier, to happen as soon as possible for you and your team, and for the shareholders, of course. Let's not forget about them. And looking forward to seeing you guys grow and hearing the next success story on LinkedIn and on YouTube.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Keith.